Hello everyone, this is your second place gamer here, more like a dedicated forum dweller. This is part 2 of my deeper analysis regarding the current crisis and situation of Diablo 4. In part 1 we talked about mostly the game creator producer's fault and what they may have done wrong to lose publicity of the product, and also gave some hints of IMO potentially dangerously and wrongly based claims by the community and trends that repeat one time after another. First of those claims is that adding more power to the endgame will fix it and make it more enjoyable. Perhaps my personal experience was a bit too specific, maybe, but I'll tell you that the moment I equipped that malignant black hearts of the barber did not rejoice, but on the contrary made me angrier. The problem is not the struggle before or the easiness after. The problem is immediate outer-worldly upgrade from what might be defined as absolutely a secondary source of gear. Additionally, I would rather claim that adding more power to the endgame will just trivialize the entire content before that even further. And that kind of demand also acknowledges and encourages IMO that disrespectful attitude that we saw in part 1. The designers namely making more and more of these barber hearts. If you are still not convinced in my rebuttal, let me give you another example. Let's say that there is a new game about to be released, the new big title on the block, and the usual starting in the woods in the middle of nowhere when your character is equipped with a stick and rope, the typical first state of adventurous survival. Then a bit later you will find a dagger and start fighting your way through some bad guys. And you continue forward the game, you will find things like Swiss Army knives, machetes, throwing knives, shurikens, swords of all kinds, including bigger than you ones, and maybe a handgun. And then, well, due to whatever the reason, a lightsaber finds its way into the game. This is what I believe is happening behind the scenes when the community and people in general ask for more power. Makes the game producers and designer add more of those lightsabers as opposed to properly balancing the content in a meaningful manner. And I'll state my opinion again that adding lightsabers in game like that is actually a sign of disrespect towards a player's meaningful effort to properly progress and perhaps player base in general. If you think that games should reward first or reward centric design, let me ask you a simple question. When is the right time to stop with them? If you disagree that the end game of goal is to provide meaningful struggles to the player base, I'll additionally talk about the damage done over time significantly over the ARPG genre. But for now though, I'll just state my case that the problem of quote-unquote injecting lightsabers like content like this in games won't make it feel freshly playable. It will just temporarily make them freshly powered up. Now sure, the actual blame is at the designer and producer adhering to this kind of demand, but there is perhaps here more behind. So, to keep things safe and right, I think we should all agree that the important part of the game design goal on the long run is to provide opportunities for meaningful struggles. And as for the player, the goal is to play the game, not outgrow it. Not having your character turned into some sort of an uber monster longing to jump out in real life. Myth number 2. Quality of life changes will fix the game. Perhaps slightly at times, but in order to rebuke this one, I'll mention another form of those sour milks regarding the gaming industry in general. That is listening to impatience and ADHD as a factor of relevance. Now, I get it. Game designers and producers want for their players to get hooked up. But, in my opinion, it's also very important to mention that is precisely by far the worst condition of human mind to have the feedback acquired from. This is perhaps my biggest criticism towards the pro scene and content creators section in general. The obsession with impatience, speed, min-maxing everything, and accepting absolutely nothing by the absolute highest performance. I get it, it is a job, and as such people need to put meal on the table. However, there is a greater problem behind here that is even more important. Namely, If the game does not demand respect, it will get none. And even further, if a game does not demand respect, it will not get publicity and viewership as well. And I will ultimately claim that for Diablo 4 even further, adhering to less as opposed to more towards those performance and reward based ideas will be the saving grace on the long run. Additionally, I'm going to point out one more reason and benefit to why the devs, producers, and game designers shouldn't be bothered about ADHD state of the players. That is, sense of completion matters, even more than providing an endless, constantly growing and rewarding system. I'm also ready to debate that every single day, sense of completion is more important than having rewards growing all the time. Myth number 3. Adding new content will fix the game. My take here is that it might diminish the impact of rerunning nightmare dungeons over and over, but it will not fix it. I mean, this section here is super concrete and focused on Diablo 4, but as long as the only way to acquire Paragon Glyph upgrades is running them over and over again, this will remain to be a problem. Whether or not there are 5, 15 or even 30 for that matter additional bosses to target farm gear, the problem will still remain further. That being said, yes, the glyph obtaining and glyph upgrading mechanics needs to be readjusted a bit to be less tedious office work on the long run. Myth number 4. Post level 100 content needed. I'll be straight blunt and outright say that this is by far the biggest soured milk and most dangerous myth of all of them. It is also most likely the direct consequence of Diablo 3, the milk that's spilled all over the endgame, to be honest. Perhaps some other games may have done something similar as well. The player base of Diablo 3 namely got used to the notion that it is acceptable for the quote-unquote regular content being beaten in recordly fast manner, and therefore be the need for another game after the original one has been beaten, which arguably starts after you've maxed out. Let me ask you a simple question: why the hell even play 69 levels prior? Or in the case of Diablo 4, 99? If you just want to behold your level 100 Thanos epically battle against villains of the multiverse, why play 99 levels? Just post the petition already. Blizzard, please give me the ability to start a level 100 character. I don't know about you, but I loathe these kinds of obsession for power. And no, again, the goal is not for the endgame to be a power fantasy chaser. The goal is for the game to provide meaningful balanced choices for meaningfully balanced struggles over all of them. And to all of you Thanoses out there, please, I beg you, no more lightsabers. Myth number 5. Inclusion target farming will fix the endgame. Let me say that it could improve the reward for effort part of things, but that improvement will be at best marginal. And let me also say that there is another potential side effect in rendering the rest of the loop even more meaningless than it currently is right now. Let me just go back to my I don't like ARPGs initial take and simply state the obvious. The main reason behind what I think and perceive as a deterioration to the genre over time is precisely that notion of reward-centric calculated design. A problem with it is obvious to me at least, that reduces the importance of journeys and just focuses on final destinations. In shortly, I'll go and name all the damage done, but briefly let me just state the obvious. Adding 0.001% loot on enormous pile of garbage, or mostly garbage, won't make it an itemization better. And yes, be patient a bit, we'll talk about the fixes, including itemization in part 3 after. Sure, you might ask now, hey, Lostariel, what is the damage done that ARPGs have endured by being mostly reward-centric in nature? What is the problem with us seeing less and less accomplishments and more reward-centric and rewarding bigger, better, more powerful rewards? Well, no effort should go to waste. Yes, that's true. However, let's look at simple facts to where things are. 1. The players are now complaining that they are wandering several steps too far without meeting an opponent. Or wandering at paths where things are no longer there. No shit, Sherlock. Sure, there might be a marginal performance improvement in these kinds of often small but impatient bits. However, this has also impacted even entire level designs and entire open worlds in this negative manner. Just think now that Diablo 4 is comprised of one big whole open world. No obstacles, no sections, do open, close, complete, unlock, nothing that will give the player any sense of completion and therefore accomplishment whatsoever. In Last Epoch, we often see the difference between fighting 10, 50 and even 200 mobs and times is 5 steps, literally. If this is what you really like, reconsider maybe reintroducing Ninja Gaiden 1 algorithm of enemy creation. Let me just openly ask, is this what you really want, people? In Grim Dawn, you killed everything except the 2 elites on screen in 3 seconds, and then, perhaps rightfully so, get quote-unquote pissed by having to rotate your entire skill bar 9 more times till those 2 are finally done. How much more lack of sense of completion can we get? Do you think that notion of deterioration has gone a bit too far? Cause I do. Perhaps last paragraph sound like a disconnected rant on something unrelated as much, but I still think that sense of completion is much more important. I'll also include Diablo 2 to the mix here, because I think that Diablo 4 and other ARPGs in general can both positively and negatively learn from this following comparison. What I'm about to do is compare what MMO is the best and worst part of areas of the same game, i.e. Diablo 2. I don't think that I'm wrong when I'm about to state that in Diablo 2 absolutely no one liked the first half of Act 3, the Spider Forest area. And on the other hand, I think that everyone liked by far the most end of Act 2, i.e. the Tombs of Tal Rasha. Have you thought of a potential reason for why? Perhaps I'm reaching a bit too far, but to me feels like the notion of sense of completion and accomplishment to be the exact reason. Namely, in Act 3 the main quest stretched almost right up to the end, to the Durance entrance, but also the Spider Forest were precisely the worst part of Diablo 2, cause it being exactly one giant green blob of green, with very narrow blue line, supposedly representing a stream of water, often pissed players to be honest. But right after that part ends, things get quite better. Lower Kurast, despite being all wide and green playing field open, as well as feeling much better. The reason? It provides completable smaller areas, provides sense of completion. Each shack, house, opened or closed high ground path, or even temple represented a whole bit by itself. These kinds of sector-based level design offer 2 advantages for players, in my opinion. One is the sense of completion that we obviously already talked about. The other is the additional benefit that lies doing this, is the opportunity for surprises. You don't know who or what is in that small enclosed area until you get a sneak peek at the entrance or get inside. Tal Rasha, on the other hand, not only provides a constant sense of accomplishment within each of its chambers, but the game also further lets you know to what point when the job is done. Say if you left over a few or single summoner in a corner, the scavenger or sarcophagus, next time you visited that place it would be full of mobs again. And no, I don't think the reason for this is potential for repeatable XP gain at the same spot. The reason is cause the game clearly lets you know whether or not you did a good job. Now I was going to talk about the things that Diablo 4 does arguably better and should stay as such. The chapter 2 of part 2 more if you like. Credit to credit there is due, but we are kind of running out of time, so I'll have to move this one at part 3 and see you there.